Welcome back to America Decides. President-elect Trump says he wants the next Senate Republican leader, the majority leader, to allow what we've discussed earlier called recess appointments. This would allow the White House to temporarily bypass confirmation votes for high-level appointments when the Senate is out of session. And in a post on social media, Trump said, quote, "Sometimes the votes can take 2 years or more. This is what they did 4 years ago, and we cannot let it happen again. We need positions filled immediately." Former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree joins us now. Tom, thanks for being here. Help us step back, Tom. Recess appointments, the history of them on a legal and political level.
Oh, boy. Well, recess appointment power is enshrined in our Constitution. Typically, the Constitution requires that the United States Senate confirm high-level federal officials, cabinet officials, federal judges, and the like. But it also says that when the Senate is in recess, basically when the senators are not in session, when they've all dispersed to their home states, the president can appoint officials through a recess appointment, which does not require Senate confirmation. So historically, this has been something that presidents will use, typically when they suspect that the Senate will not confirm the nominee they'd like to put in the job. So they wait until the senators go out of town and bam, recess appointment. It's a little peculiar that Trump is pushing so hard to eliminate any possibility that he couldn't make recess appointments, because I don't suspect he would be encountering that much difficulty with the Republican-controlled Senate confirming his nominees.
What are the legal concerns, if any, on this front?
Well, the legal concern would simply be that the president would use this as an opportunity to bypass the normal constitutional process for confirming officials. In other words, the founders wanted to ensure that there was a senatorial check on high-level appointments, that the United States senators would evaluate the qualifications of nominees and only approve those who are deemed worthy. A recess appointment enables the president to circumvent that process. So that would be the concern, that if a president were to use this power indiscriminately, in other words, not for legitimate reasons, such as because they actually need someone to fill this spot during a time of a national security crisis, for example, but simply because they wanted to circumvent the Senate's approval process, that would be a legal concern.
The Justice Department. Everybody who's down at Mar-a-Lago is telling me all eyes are on who's picked for Attorney General. But not only who's picked for Attorney General, who's picked for Deputy Attorney General, who's picked to run the criminal division. What are you hearing from your sources and friends in the legal community about concerns they might have, who they believe might be the ultimate pick, and why that matters?
Right. Well, it certainly matters. No question about that. And I think the chatter about looking at maybe the slightly not top position, but the deputy positions, is very well placed. Those are critically important jobs, because those are the people who will be doing things like signing off and approving prosecutions. Those will be the ones appearing in the courtrooms of the United States on behalf of the president to defend his policies. I don't want to say the Attorney General is a figurehead. He's obviously not, but there's only so much an Attorney General can do, and the day-to-day work of the Justice Department is often carried out by these slightly lower-level officials. So I think attention is properly paid to who's filling those slots that are vitally important.
In terms of the independence of the Justice Department, what are you watching?
Well, you want to make sure that the president is choosing people who, yes, we know that he likes people who are loyal to him, but you also want people who are loyal to the rule of law and who will faithfully execute the laws of the United States and will be faithful to the Constitution. And occasionally that may mean pushing back against what the president wants. And so ideally, the president will choose people in whom, number one, he has confidence, number two, who are committed to his agenda, but three, who will also give him their honest, independent judgment about what the law requires.
Beyond DOJ, as you watch the nomination announcement for EPA, you watch it for UN. As a lawyer, as someone who's been inside the federal government, what are you paying attention to? What can you help us understand through your prism?
Sure. Well, you're getting a sense of what sort of qualities and attributes the president is valuing as he assembles his second-term cabinet. One thing we've seen is that he likes office holders, either current or former, people he's chosen, New York congressmen and the like.
And White House counsel is going to matter a lot.
So White House counsel will matter too. So the president wants people, I think, number one, that he actually knows personally. In other words, he wants to have a personal stamp of approval, someone that he knows, someone that he trusts, rather than someone who might be recommended to him as a good person by his advisors. So he values loyalty, he values experience, and we'll see. There's certainly a lot more slots to be filled, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people right now who are going down to Mar-a-Lago to lobby for these jobs, and we'll see what the president-elect decides.
And just very quickly here, the vetting process. How difficult is it, and how are lawyers involved?
Sure, it can be a difficult process. I mean, they typically, for cabinet positions, they will do a fairly deep dive into everything, into your finances, into your background, into your public statements, your records, if you have a criminal history, all of that. So it's a pretty exhaustive process. Lawyers play a crucial role in that. Lawyers will help sift through all this documentary evidence, maybe flag issues that even the nominee himself wasn't aware of. And of course, they can also help prepare the nominee for his or her confirmation process before the Senate, where you're sure to get questions, at least from the Democrats. That can be tough.
Well, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, transitions are always a good time for lawyers. Tom Dupree, thank you.
Hello.
No.
And did you ever get any money from Meyer Lansky?
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those
None
fellas?
of those fellas. None of these that I've been reading about, or none that I knew. They never gave me anything.
None of the Shennys?
No. I don't even speak to it. I mean, I met that Charlie once or twice. I don't even talk to him.
You don't like them?
No.
Night Court with Joe Lanou live on X.
Also known as Duck Corella.
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent to
You
criminate.
got any business?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of intent to criminate.
You have any profession?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main
You
intent
have
to
any
criminate.
occupation?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent
Are
to
you a
criminate.
known racketeer?
I refuse to answer on the grounds of main intent.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to Night Court. We're kind of back at it again. As some of or all of you probably know, I've been on a little bit of a life break for a little bit. Since the election, though, I've been kind of getting back into X, and I've been going to all sorts of spaces, just listening. Had been a speaker. I just wanted to go hear what people had to say, and just listening, like the right-leaning spaces. It's been jubilee and celebration. Everyone has been telling their testimonies on how good they feel about the outcome of the election. And I go to the left spaces, and the left spaces are completely opposite of this, obviously, but even more so, more than I think I realized. It's truly doom and gloom. I've heard discussions on tariffs on bananas, which evidently is the most sold fruit or food item in the United States, which are bananas, and there's going to be a tariff on those. Therefore, the air quotes, your eggs are too expensive, and that's why you voted for Trump. It's going to be worse for us now. If y'all didn't know that, there's going to be a tariff on bananas. In general, Trump supporters are too dumb to understand how things work. We just don't understand how the system works and how Donald Trump is the worst thing that we could have done for ourselves. Many of them say that we as Trump supporters are going to get what we wanted, and they just can't wait to laugh. But for any of you guys that have any left-leaning friends that are on X, you might want to get a hold of them. There are a lot of this is my last day on X Spaces today. I think tomorrow, when the new terms of service comes out, many of them are going to an app called Blue Sky. And evidently Blue Sky is about to open something similar to Spaces. So they're going to go there. They're not going to allow us to bask in their glory and their intelligence. They're going to give us what we wanted since we voted for it, and that's what we asked for. So interesting little take, I thought, on our liberal friends out there. They're not taking this as graciously as you think some might. But tonight we want to talk about cabinet picks. We've got our President Trump-elect started dropping cabinet picks pretty quick. The first one we heard about was Susie Wiles, which is the chief of staff, first woman chief of staff, which is surprising. I didn't realize that we hadn't had a woman in that position, but evidently we haven't. She is the first. Stephen Miller, the guy who talks real funny when he's on the news. He's going to be a senior Trump advisor. I guess he's just a general advisor, but he was a Trump advisor in the first administration, and some say he's the architect of the first-term immigration policy. We got Ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik, a congressman out of New York. EPA Director Lee Zeldin, another congressman out of New York, former congressman out of New York. Elise Stefanik actually is holding a seat. They're going to have to negotiate that. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Florida Congressman, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, which I thought was funny how how quickly he named this one. But Mike Huckabee, he ran for president as a Republican, unsuccessfully, obviously, and Arkansas governor. But he's outspoken about there never was a Palestine as far as a country. It's not something that didn't exist. It shouldn't exist. And so it's interesting that he's going to be the ambassador to Israel. The director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, he was I think the last or one of the director of national intelligence in the first administration. They've got him tagged for the CIA. That's going to be very interesting as well. Secretary of Homeland Defense, Kristi Noem, governor of South Dakota. Secretary of Defense, this was an odd one, Pete Hegseth, a Fox weekend commentator for the Fox News program. But for those that don't know, he's actually a very published author. He has some pretty deep thoughts on what our military is for. I kind of lean in his direction. He's an ex-U.S. Army infantry officer. And he just believes our military just needs to be able to do one thing, and that's be lethal. And I kind of appreciate that. But out of the blue, didn't see that one coming. FBI Director Kash Patel, another outspoken guy. I think he worked in intelligence before, but that's going to be interesting for the FBI. Then we got some czars. We got border czar Tom Holman. Y'all might remember him from the first administration. He's a very outspoken critic of the Biden administration's border policy. He's a super strong advocate for deportation, and I believe that's the way it looks like they've tapped him to do, is to put that together and start the mass deportations that was promised in the campaign. Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, is Director of National Intelligence, the DNI. That's what Ratcliffe held in the first administration. And then Robert F. Kennedy, another Democrat, or maybe even Libertarian, it's hard to say, but Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK, is the Department of Health and Human Services. And I think that's where everybody thought he was going to go in the first place. But I know that took a little time, but I wanted to run through all the ones that I knew of already that had been put out before we open the discussion. But what I'd like to do is talk about each one of these, and we can go right down the list if you'd like. But what's everyone's opinion on these picks and whether they think that these picks are good, bad, or just don't know yet? Let me get some mics out and get my co-host set up here. Bring up Fidji as a co-host. Bruce, I'm going to bring you up as a co-host. Let me know when that kicks in, guys. Sorry, I got caught up in my monologue and doing some production work here. We're also live streaming on X and YouTube, just the audio, but we're still live streaming. Okay, co-host, if you could help pass out some mics. I've thrown one to while Jason's up.
We'll go ahead and handle that.
All right then. Bruce, why don't you go first? What do you think about? Let's don't go to the chief of staff. I mean, if he likes his chief of staff, I've got nothing to say about that. Let's go to Ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik. What do you think about that?
I've got no problem. I don't know a whole lot about Stefanik, but so I guess I don't have a personal opinion on him, but I have no negative opinion on him either.
Okay. What do you think about that position? How important is the ambassador to the UN as far as a president's diplomatic strategy?
Well, I think the UN's a worthless organization. I think it's an important role if they do it right, just to shut everything down, just to reject all the suggestions of the UN. But as far as us being a part of the UN, I don't know how important that is for us.
Well, a lot of our tax dollars goes to the UN, and we've used them in the 90s, starting with Desert Storm, as political cover, if you will, for the rest of the world. If the UN said that this was wrong, and then the United States just stepped in and enforced what the UN asked. it was used that way. Do you think that's important to us in the future, or do you think the UN is something we should pull our tax dollars from and we don't need an ambassador?
Yeah, I would be fully in support of us getting out of the UN. Like any organization that has China and Russia on the board, like we have ambassadors. We don't need the UN. Definitely don't need our money going there.
Okay, so you don't have a lot to think about, at least Stefanik taking that position, good or bad, right?
I just don't know a whole lot about him personally.
It's
I
a her. I think her pronoun is her.
All right. Clearly, yes. Don't know much.
Okay, Fidji, what do you think about Elise Stefanik for ambassador to the UN?
I don't know much about Elise Stefanik. I've heard her name, but that's about all I know of her. As far as being an ambassador to the UN, I kind of agree with Bruce that we need to get out of the UN, but we need to take our dollars with us too on that. But at the same time, while we're in it, I do think that position is important because it is our voice in there. But honestly, I think we should dump the UN.
So you're with Bruce. Take our money and our ball and go home.
Yeah, if we're going to be in there, we need a good voice. So I wish I knew more about her.
Okay, she's been around for a minute. She is the New York congressman out of New York. I believe she's sitting, so we'll have to negotiate that to see how that works out. We have a majority in the House, but it's not like we have a great deal of a majority. A flu could change the count on certain bills. But
Yeah.
Moni, does anybody have anything to say, or is it all going to be? She sounds great. I don't know anything about her. Anybody have anything to say about her as a UN secretary, or whether we ambassador, or whether we actually need one?
Well, I'll say that she has been very outspoken in the conservative realms lately. And I like all of these choices, but it kind of makes me a little bit nervous. We're losing our powerhouses in Congress. So I hope they have some good folks lined up to fill these seats.
It seems like they're negotiating that well. I think that was the reason Matt Gaetz had to put in his resignation so quickly. Well, I've heard two stories on that. We'll get to that when we get to the Attorney General, which wasn't listed. But it sounds like they're negotiating and kind of handpicking who they feel pretty confident they can refill the seat back with a Republican representative. I've even heard the theory that they're getting rid of the rhinos in these positions so that they can fill them with more freedom-loving conservative representatives. But like I say, I'm not sure how truthful that is. Well, welcome, Shelley. I know you have an opinion on who our UN ambassador is. Well, that's rare. Shelley is speechless. Let's move on to EPA director. I actually thought this was interesting. Lee Zeldin, another former New York congressman, ran for governor of New York and put up a pretty good fight against Holcomb, but still didn't win. But EPA director, what do you think about the impact of that?
I think, with the EPA, they're still kind of struggling at this moment because of the Chevron deference being struck down, and that kind of puts them in a whirlwind because all the law they set before is kind of useless going forward. It'll be interesting to see how he does, but I know he's a very strong conservative.
Well, I think that's a positive. I think a lot of our red tape when it comes to building under the Obama administration, the government picked up and just said they owned all the water. What that means is that anywhere there's water runoff, the EPA has some standing to come in and say how things go. So it affects construction jobs, farmers, believe it or not, from what they put on their fields or when they plow their fields and how you have runoff. So it's going to be interesting. If they're talking about cutting red tape, we'll see if Lee Zeldin is the guy for that. Go ahead, Shelley, and welcome.
You think I talk too much, do you?
I don't know. No, that's not what I'm saying.
I'm teasing you.
Hey, you got me. You got me on that one. Yeah, you got me. You got me.
You didn't know how to react on that one, huh? You weren't expecting that. That was pretty funny. Gotcha. Oh, you were, I couldn't hear you. You were cutting out. All I heard was UN ambassador. And what do you think, Shelley? So what was your question, Joe?
Well, Elise Stefanik as the president's person for that position. Do you think that's a good pick, or does that position doesn't mean anything to you?
I think that all of his picks are remarkable. The only one that I'm kind of wishy-washy about is the Kristi Noem pick. That would not have been that. That one's kind of hard for me to I don't know. But I can tell you that I think that everybody that he has picked are obviously people that he have been very close to him the last couple of years that have stuck by him. And the biggest thing about all these individuals is they don't back down from anything. So so far, now I've been gone all day today. I know that Kennedy got his seat, but did they announce the FBI director today?
Yes, Kash Patel.
Does anybody know?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Kash
so that's
Patel.
a given. That's a given. So, you know, it's funny how they are having a meltdown over Matt Gaetz when look at all the people that Biden had in his administration, right?
What are you talking about? These were all solid people. The Biden. I've been listening left spaces. I started the show with that before you were in here, Shelley. But I've been listening to a lot of the left-leaning spaces. Which, by the way, if you have any left friends, you might get them tonight. Tonight's their last day on X. They're going somewhere else. But no, they're serious. They're packed in there talking all about it. But they just don't think that we're smart enough to understand what we've gotten ourselves into, and that they're the smartest ones in the room.
Really? That's where they like to dress up like women, and they like to have sex with each other, and they like to have sex with children, and they're going to shave their head and not have sex with men because Kamala lost.
I see some positives in some of that you said there.
Oh, you're funny.
But
Anyway.
no, and seriously, and I see your hand up, Carl. I'll come to you. But seriously, how many really believe that these people are going to abstain from sex relationships and moving on with their life over the next 4 years? They're going to walk around and soul up and be sulky and meet each other with blue bracelets in the street or something. I mean, does anybody really take that seriously?
Have you seen some of them? Some of them weren't going to have sex anyway.
Some of them were on the 4B list long before it was 4B.
Well, so the funny thing about Matt Gaetz's nomination is when he was announced, the left was sharing a clip and the right was sharing the same clip, and the right was like, "This is awesome." It's that clip where he's like, "These women who want abortions are so fat and ugly they never need abortions." He's like, "Well, how do you respond when they say that's offensive?" And he's like, "Be offended." And the right's like, "Hell yeah, this is awesome." And the left's like, "Oh, this is awful." The thing about the left is they see Republicans, well, the right sees Democrats as people with bad ideas, and the left sees Republicans as bad people with ideas. They don't look into the ideas that the right has. They don't understand what we think or why we think that way.
Real quick, Joe, can you bring B Wing up as co-host? I cannot do that.
Yes, ma'am. I'm right on top of that.
You know, Joe, I have to say hello to everybody too. I have to say my hello to my sister Mooney, and I have to say hi to Carl and Lexi and B and Dexter and Jason and B Waters and Joe and everybody, Nate, Fidge, Doctor, Jason, who's this person? Oh, one. Just hello everybody. It's good to be here. And hi Joe.
Well, it's always a treat to have you in with us, Shelly. So thank you for coming in. Hey, let's go to Carl. Has had his hand up quite some time.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So I got Dexter on the phone. He's listening to you guys. Just wanted to say hi and pop in and give his perspective on things, and also the topic. I thought it was an interesting topic for him to share his thoughts about the cabinet picks. So go ahead, Dexter, say something. They can hear you.
Check 1 2 1 2. Joe, can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear on my end.
They can hear you.
It is so good to hear your voice, Dexter.
It's so good to hear all y'all. It's almost like being in a space back in the before I went inside. Yeah, that's good. Let me see. Carl just filled me in on some of these cabinet picks. I have to say I have my doubts about Rubio as Secretary of State, just because I don't know, I don't know what his experience is in terms of foreign relations and things like that. Tulsi Gabbard as DNI, same kind of thing. What is, what's her background? What does she bring to the table? And even if she lacks a background in intelligence, if she has strong opinions on American foreign policy, if she believes in restraint, if she believes in pulling back the curtain on some of what the government's been doing in terms of spying on us, then that's a good thing. But again, too soon to tell. And I heard about this agency. It's an agency for government efficiency, Department of Government Efficiency. I mean, that sounds great. My question would be right away, like, what do they have power to do? Do they have subpoena power, for example? Can they call? Can they get hearings called? Can they compel testimony? Can they kickstart investigations? Or can they only report on various programs and things like that seem to be a waste of money?
I actually, Dexter, I can answer that for you. I've done a little research on that one. The Department of Government Efficiency is no more than a outside presidential advisory board. Reagan did the same thing, I think, with the Gracie Commission, where they looked at government and gave the president suggestions on what to do to cut fat or make the government more efficient. So they have no legitimate authority, but they are advisors to the president. No subpoenas, no action, none whatsoever.
idea of what is efficient versus inefficient is predicated or has to be downstream from your philosophy of what government's job is in the first place. And so I'd just be interested in hearing more about, Elon Musk, and I forget who the other gentleman is for years, and directing it with him as well. I want to know what their philosophy is about what government should be doing in the first place. With me, for example, I've heard for years now, I've heard Republicans railing against the Postal Service. Now, I happen to think that it's a perfectly normal thing for us to have a Postal Service. It's provided for in the Constitution. And it's one of those things where we can celebrate private industry. We can and should elevate the spirit of business. But it's also good to have something that's ours as an American people. And, perfectly normal, non-socialist industrial countries have a postal service, and they don't treat it like it's a liability. They treat it like it's part of it. It's theirs. It belongs to the country. To me, and so I'd just be interested in finding out more about where these guys are coming from in terms of what they even think government should do. I think this is a time, to me anyway, this is a time for conservatives, not libertarians. I like my conservative peoples because, or even my Christian libertarian peoples, because they have a theory of man, and so they can argue coherently about why freedom is important, liberty is important. If you don't have any of that, if you just have to think that liberty is good because people do cool stuff with it, that's not good enough. If you just have a big sense that liberty is important because it helps us,
Okay, let's go to some hands. Jason.
Hey guys, how's it going? I just wanted to comment. I kind of I'm looking at his selections and I'm actually kind of chuckling about it. So,
All right.
Dexter just brought up Rubio. If you go back to Trump's first term, the selection of Rubio in that position, I think just opens up a Senate seat, because last time Trump did all the overseas interviews, to me, it's I don't think Trump's going to stop doing that. I think Rubio is more of a kind of a chess card that Trump's still going to do it, and maybe he doesn't like Rubio where he's at, and it just opens up a Senate seat and kind of a pawn. The other thing with Matt Gaetz, y'all remember when I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, they published that article that he had relations with a minor, and he basically got shamed, and he came out and just denied it all. And then 18 months later, I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, that career prosecutors came out and said no charges are present here. And then they created I just think it's an interesting choice that he was smeared by the media. 18 months later, no charges were presented, and the whole thing just kind of went away. But on the point of the media it was a smear campaign against him. So for whatever reason, I don't know. I have a question actually for Joe the attorney, if you don't mind. Do you Senate confirmation, everybody who is picked has to go through a process. Do you think, is this a challenge to the Senate confirmation under the original constitutional language, that it's constitutional to handle the process in the manner that it's been done since the original constitutional language? If that question makes sense. Has it changed? Has the confirmation changed? Is the confirmation from the original language transformed into something now where Trump may be challenging the language originally? Does that make sense?
No, that makes no sense at all. I don't understand your question at all.
Answer since he asked me.
Well, how am I going to understand your answer? I don't understand the question.
Has the process of confirmation through a Senate changed from original constitutional language to today?
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Am I allowed to answer now? Cool. I thought that's what he meant from the get-go. I don't think it hasn't, the performative aspect of it has changed, but I mean, the Constitution literally says the Senate shall advise and consent on the appointees, and that's what they do. So I don't think it's really changed. I think the political game has changed, and I think it's far too personal now. But I don't really see much of it changed, except for when the 17th Amendment was passed, things change a little bit because states the senators no longer represented the states. They were just higher congressmen, kind of. They lost their power. I don't know how else to say it. But I don't think in the grand scheme of things, it's really changed that much. It's just now more of a political game than it seemed to have ever been before. But they still do the advise and consent part that they're constitutionally obligated to do.
So
Are you seeing something I'm not?
what about recess appointments?
That was my next point, Joe. Go ahead.
I think recess appointments are bullshit.
Are they constitutional?
That's debatable.
Is it mentioned in the Constitution?
Not that I know of.
That's where I was going, Joe. Thanks for, I wanted to hear your answer, and that was going to be my question. So thanks for reading my mind.
I think that those are ridiculous because Congress is supposed to be, while they're working, they're supposed to be there, make those decisions, and we shouldn't be pulling strings behind the curtains.
Anyway, that's all I had. I just wanted to speak a couple thoughts there. Thanks, Joe, for answering my question.
I believe that's the goal of the Trump administration, right? And that's why he's trying to get all these laid out there so that he can do recess appointments. Because I believe a recess appointment is good until the end of the session.
And I was wrong though. It's in Article 2, Section 2. I forgot about that.
Oh, did you? Weird.
Yeah. Oh yeah, weird. Sorry. My brain's going 900 different
No,
ways right now.
no, and I don't know how long it's been there. I think it was there all along. In the absence of, if Congress is not in session, then the president he doesn't have to wait on them. He can make these appointments, and some of them are good for his term, and some of them are good to the end of the that session. They'll have to be
The end of the congressional
set right.
They're good till the end of the. Yeah, what you said. They're good to the end of the recess.
Right. So it's very interesting that they can make most of what he's done here. He could have them in play within a week after being inaugurated. Sorry, Jason, I stepped on you. My apologies. And then let's go to Dr. Douglas, another attorney. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Just last point. I just watched a video with Pete Hogseth on Sean Ryan, and if you guys want to, I think if you watch Sean Ryan, if you're familiar with him, I love his shows, but it's a really good interview. And Hegseth, is actually a Minnesota dude, a guy who is really into 3D response. Superintendent of schools actually was his superior over in the Middle East, knows him very well. And if you watch that, it's a long interview, but I think you'll see why he was picked.
I recommend that too, Jason. I watched that. It'll give you a different dimension on that man and what he's all about. I'm not against the pick. I think the pick was outstanding and out of right field, but or out of left field maybe. But either way, I like it. Dr. Douglas, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing well, my friend. Thank you for asking.
Good. Just a couple of things. First of all, it's pretty clear that Trump, even though that he has a tendency of seeming like he never learns from his mistakes, clearly he learned from the first term about appointing people that were not loyal to him, and so we have that one thread seems to run through all of these candidates. And whether or not, to somebody's point, whether or not it was a setup to get Rubio to move to a side, or that Getz, could move to the side. They put somebody else in there. I don't know. I mean, if he's playing that level of three-dimensional chess, then, more power to him. But it seems like everybody there is loyal. That I also recommend just about everything Sean Ryan does. But that interview with Pete Hegseth was absolutely fantastic. And I learned a lot about him. I knew who the guy was just from, seeing him on TV, but I really kind of dug into who he was. But there was a point that was made, and it was made by, people that are obviously, attacking some of the decisions. And of interest, there was a Secretary of War who started as the Undersecretary of War, and the similarities between him and Hegseth are really interesting because they're both majors. They're both basically part of the adopted E4 Mafia as 04s, but they were both majors. Robert Patterson was the Undersecretary of War all during World War II. He was responsible for so many things. It's just not even funny. And then after Hiroshima, he actually served as the Secretary of War under Truman. And again, he was an 04, but he was a highly decorated Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, decorated major in the military. So everybody that all of a sudden gets this concept that Secretary of Defense has to have, 5, stars on their shoulders before they get in there, that's ridiculous. I mean, as a matter of fact, it kind of belays the fact that civilian leadership is supposed to have oversight over the military. Yeah, you're going to want to have like your chief of naval operations, so on and so forth. But really, for the most part, Secretary of Defense should be coming from the civilian world. On the point to, I know Tulsi Gabbard had a background, at least in psyops in the Army, and I think that she was on the Homeland Security, was Homeland Security and also Foreign Affairs as a 4-term Congressperson. So she's already got a little bit of a background there in intelligence. But again, you don't have to have been a freaking CIA agent, to actually absorb all those threats and all the intelligence that's coming in. The last point on the United Nations, United Nations is almost at this point a little bit almost like NATO. It's a undesirable but necessary evil that, and maybe evil's kind of overstating a little bit in my opinion, but it has a necessary function in the world because the United Nations really serves as almost like a bitching station for every other nation that has issues with the United States, that it's not bogging down, the State Department as much. I don't know. I had done some work through World Trade Organization back when I was a Fed that was being pushed back up through the United Nations. And the truth of the matter is that, our State Departments, for those of y'all that know about it, but I mean, half of it is an intelligence and information gathering operation to begin with. I mean, it's diplomatic, but really for the most part, there is a diplomatic component to it. But at all times, that is a signal and human intelligence collecting operation all over the world. And I mean, make no mistake, they're doing it here on U.S. soil as well. Absolutely. So really, the minutia of the diplomacy is necessarily done there at the United Nations. We don't want to get into talking about saddling down the State Department with the migratory bird treaties and all the rest of the things that they can do. So that's all I had.
Some good points. Thank you. I want to go back to Carl because I think, and Nate, I see your hand up down there, brother. I'm not ignoring you, but I think we may have Dexter back on the line. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, we got Dexter back on the line. Dexter, do you want to say a few more things?
Sure. I mean, I think I'm with the gentleman who just spoke in that, the heads of these departments don't necessarily have to have all the detailed knowledge that their subordinates or that actual field operatives would need to have. Whether you're talking about foreign service operatives or intelligence operatives. And of course, he's quite right that State Department and CIA have always worked very closely together. In fact, in the Cold War, a lot of our European spy networks, it was the spy handlers that would send out from CIA would work in foreign embassies under diplomatic cover. And if their network got blown, then they'd just be, usually just be declared for someone about it, and then they go home. So yeah, I think he's right about that. I'm really looking for not so much like detailed knowledge, but at least evidence that some of these people have a philosophy that's more or less in line with where populist conservatives and America First people are at right now. I think I don't agree with my MAGA president about everything, but when they talk about kind of defining the national interest more narrowly, right? Getting out of all these overcommitments around the world, getting back to the kind of thing that the framers envisioned, which was that we trade with just about everybody. We wouldn't go around looking for enemies. We wouldn't go abroad looking for monsters to destroy. People who get these picks, get the nod for these kinds of things. I think at least I want to hear that they have some kind of coherent philosophy that's driving their actions. I don't want to hear all the promises about what they would do. I'm really more interested in what their foundational beliefs are. And the same goes for anything else, any other government position. I want to know what's your fundamental position on the relationship between citizen and the state. What's your theology? To shortcut it. And so we'll see. I was telling Carl that I'm hoping that Lee Zeldin really tries to jumpstart energy production again and construction across the board again, because I'm really looking for America in this next 4 years to start to grow its way out of this economic slump. We can't tax our way out of it. We certainly can't spend our way out of it. We can grow our way out of it. And energy is my favorite way of cheap energy is my absolute favorite way of growing us out of this slump. So we'll see. I'll let it.
Yeah, that is one of Trump's 47 plans is to have the cheapest energy in the world. He's talking about electrical production, fossil fuels, and straight across the board. So I like that as well. Let's go to Nate. Welcome, Nate. Apologize for the wait, my friend.
Thanks, Joe. It's no issue. I was just looking at Gates confirmation. I love it, but at the same time, my concerns with Gates is whenever I look at any cabinet position, I always weigh, is this person going to be more of a
Welcome back to
Cleveland
America
or
Decides.
more
President-elect
of
Trump
Teddy
says he wants the
Roosevelt?
next Senate Republican
And what I
leader, the
mean by
majority
that
leader, to
is,
allow
are they
what we've
the type of
discussed earlier
person
called
that will,
recess appointments. This would
cross
allow
the T's and dot the I's, or are they more of let's act now and we will do cleanup after we get whatever agenda we have passed? And for me, I think for Secretary of State, Gates leans a little bit more towards the Roosevelt side. And that was one thing I was concerned about him, as opposed to Senator Mike Lee from Utah, who seems to be more of the leans heavy towards
shockwaves throughout Washington,
towards the Grover Cleveland side, where if something even looks a little bit fishy, he's going to take the time to make sure everything is correct before it gets passed or before he takes action. And I want to jump also in over to like Rubio, the Secretary of Defense position, the Secretary of State position, and then the DNI position. Because when it comes to foreign policy, I always think of those as the three heavy hitters. And I also think it's kind of curious how he put Rubio in the Department of State, where Rubio is probably a lot more would be a lot more open to getting involved in foreign conflicts, and then put Tulsi Gabbard, who has pushed for more of non-interventionalism, into the DNI position, which I think is interesting because, like I said, how they describe the information they're getting. I think how it filters is something Trump might be interested in because as Rubio, whose department is more focused on peaceful relations with foreign countries, Rubio will give more of a perspective on, I guess, with conflict. But what was interesting with Gabbard was as DNI, correct me if I'm wrong, she collects the intel from the FBI, CIA, or sorry, her department does, as well as all the intelligence agency, compiles into the report, and then briefs the president on whatever intelligence matters.
Yeah, she's also an advisor for declassification. I think before the president can declassify something, it has to go through the DNI's approval or suggestion, not approval necessarily. But I think you're right with some of what you say. But I think Rubio being out front, I think Secretary of State is one of the most out front cabinet positions. And if it were me, I could put somebody there that you can still keep tabs on what they're doing and direct them. I think the Secretary of State has to be pretty close to the president as far as their direction on how they implement our foreign policy. If it's the president's foreign policy. But let me get to Moni and see what she's got to say about some of what you said.
Hey guys. Hello, Carbon Mike, Dexter Taylor. Glad to have you on the call. You asked earlier when you were going over your list, if there was more about Tulsi, and some great points have been made. But I wanted to point out one of the big things is she's felt the weight of this government just like Trump has. The day after she spoke out against Kamala Harris, they put her on a domestic terrorist watch list. And Joe's pecking on his keyboard, it sounds like. But they put her on a domestic terror watch list, the Quiet Skies program, and actually had bomb sniffing dogs and air marshals following her around with no explanation the day after she spoke out about Kamala. So I think that plays a big role in her feeling the brunt of this government as well on her nomination.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. They had her on a fly watch list where U.S. Marshals went wherever she was going. So, well, what do you think about the director of the CIA, the John Radcliffe guy? Do you think he's going to stay on top of the CIA and pulling the reins a little bit?
Once because the FBI director like I said, closely with Gabbard too. Do you think how do you think like those nominations for FBI and CIA as well as the DNI position are really tied? Because all three of those also work really close together, and then DNI just does the daily briefing with the president.
Yeah, but they're independent department heads, are they not?
Yes, just DNI compiles all the compartmental information for the presidential's daily brief. So President Trump will see Gabbard on a daily basis with the daily brief of what's happening in all the hot spots of the world.
Okay, I guess I'm missing your point. But hey, I want to go to Carl because I know that we have limited time with Dexter tonight. Go ahead, Carl. And I'll come back to you, Nate. I hadn't forgotten you.
Hey, so Dexter had to go. He needs to call his parents before they shut off the Wi-Fi at 11. But he wanted to thank Joe and everyone for listening to him. And, he does enjoy being a part of these spaces. It gives him a sense of home. But he is very excited about Fiji's idea when it comes to the business cards and doing the design.
and a QR code to go to his Gifts and Go. So he loves that. He loves the hoodies, by the way. He's excited about that. He wanted to know if we can get a hoodie and a hat to his daughter, Naomi. I told him that we'll work on that. I sent pictures of the hoodies, the different designs to his parents, and they love it. And his parents also wants to thank everyone for um, doing what they're doing, you know, reaching out to different mediums and advocating on behalf of him. They're overjoyed and didn't think they didn't even know about all of this until he told them, and to Busybody and myself told them about what you guys are doing. So, kudos to everyone for helping out in the campaign. And you know, me and Joe and Dexter is working on a way that Dexter can call in where we're not listening through my phone to my computer to relay messages to you guys. So hopefully we can get that off the ground. But yeah, thank you to everyone.
Well, Carl, next time you talk to Dexter, if it's before me, I'm just about there. I'm doing actually a test. We're simulcasting now, streaming the space out on YouTube and our X streaming show, and it's working well. Everyone's voice in the room is going through. The only thing I have to test is in the studio, but I found a way to reconfigure the wiring on this. I think we got it whipped one or two ways, so we're pretty close. And also, and I sent this to him in an email as well. We've got the hat ready to go. Just need a size for the hoodie, and there's 2 colors that she could choose from, and an address to ship it to when we're ready to go with those 2 items.
All right, I'll let him know, and I'll let his parents know. So yeah, his daughter is doing good. She misses him a lot, of course. But they're also happy that with the efforts that we're doing. I shared, I don't know if I shared it in the Purple Pill, but I shared it in the group. Some contacts that Dexter would love for us to reach out to as far as promoting his case. If anybody heard the Dana Lash interview, share that with people like Donald Trump Jr. and Lee Zeldin, people who are going to be a part of the certain people who are going to be a part of the new administration, but also with, the Trumps, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, people like that. So if we can share like different interviews that Dexter has done, different write-ups about Dexter, that would be beneficial, because the goal is to get this amplified to a point that there's not anyone in conservative or two-way circles who don't know the name Dexter Taylor. So that's the goal. We're trying to raise money for this appeal. As Cop Joe and Lawyer Joe know, that's a process. So therefore, we have to be able to finance it. So the hoodies is one way we're financing it, but we're also trying to get people to like donate and know the story. So that's about it.
No, absolutely. We've got to keep that story out there. I think more Americans that know more about Dexter, that y'all heard me say it before, he's the neighbor that you'd want to have. If you drop $20, he chase you 2 blocks to give it back to you. And if you want to say that he committed any offense, he didn't buy permits. Literally, he didn't buy permits, and they treated him like he's a violent felon. He's in a maximum security prison for 10 years. Never had a criminal history, never had any infractions with the law. 50-year-old man living his life, doing his business. He did build firearms in his own home within his own property, and by God, that just feels like that's an American thing that you're allowed to do, by God. But back to the hoodie, guys. It's a little pricey at $50. The cost on these, and they're good quality hoodies, are $38. That gets it shipped anywhere in the United States for sizes 2X and down. We've rounded it up to $50, so $12 every time a hoodie is purchased. $12 will be donated in the person that bought that or that donated that, whatever the name is. A donation will be made in their name. Excuse me, I was getting a call in the middle of that. A donation will be made in the donor's name. And of course, you get receipts. I did this with the Dexter hat. Anybody that purchased a Dexter hat through me, I added $10 on top of it and then did that 10. And most people actually did more than that. Whatever was the overage of the cost of the hat went to the Dexter Taylor Legal Fund. Sig Soda has designed these. They look great, but Sig Soda is running a business, and he can't very well make these donations without just screwing his books up. So Sig sells them basically to us at cost, and the cost on these hoodies are $38. That's them printed and shipped. And we're adding literally $12, rounding it up to 50, so that every time we see one of those hoodies, we know that that was another $12 that went towards Dexter's legal fund, which, by the way, we absolutely need. He can't get his appeal filed until he has the money to pay for it. So every day that he's sitting there without the appeal clock ticking, it's just another day of serving a sentence by a man, in my opinion, that shouldn't be serving it. But guys, we are at the top of the hour. We're going to take a quick break. Everybody would refresh this and repost. I don't not refresh it. Repost it for me, and we're going to take about a 5-minute break. We'll be back.
Over this afternoon's announcement of Donald Trump's picks for his cabinet, the biggest shocker being the selection of Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to be the next U.S. Attorney General. One person who has had experience with Donald Trump's sudden, unexpected, controversial announcements is his former White House Communications Director, Anthony Scaramucci. Anthony, good to see you. So Matt Gaetz as a U.S. Attorney General, one-time Democratic Congresswoman, now Republican Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, Pete Hegseth, who is a Fox Weekend, Fox and Friends co-host and also military veteran, to be Secretary of Defense, DC's establishment reeling. What you know Donald Trump, and you were part of his White House for 11 days. What's your reaction?
Well, I think it's very simple. I mean, the whole strategy, you have to own the liberals. So, and now it's you got to own the liberals and the establishment and the ex-Republicans that have rejected Donald Trump. And so if you're sitting around thinking about how you're going to do that, let's pick some triggering people. And so those are the triggering people. And then the real test is, you know, Jake, honestly, I went through the 53 senators, maybe Murkowski, maybe Susan from Maine. I don't know. I think that's it. You've got 51 senators that are going to approve these people. And of course, if you can get to 50, let's say McConnell is in there, you get to 50, then you have J.D. Vance as the 51st vote. So they sort of think like they've got you packed in and bunched up, and so they're going to shove their people. But you got to hopefully, well, you'll get Matt Gaetz on and say, so what exactly do you want to do? You know, are you a lawfare person? Are you going to be prosecuting citizens for no reason? Are we going to have show trials around the country? These are all things that these guys have talked about. So if that's what they're going to do, at least inform the citizens of it. You know, Trump was very clear when he was campaigning. I'm campaigning on XYZ. He's now delivering XYZ. And so my question to his supporters is, hey guys, you know, I was traveling around the country speaking at places, Jake, asking people, are you taking Trump seriously? And literally 80% of the people that said they were voting for him said, no, I'm not taking him literally. Okay, well, now you're getting some literal things he's doing. And so, you know, you tell me, are we going to have 15 million people deported? Are you going to jack up tariffs so that lower middle income people can't afford their expenses? Are we going to bring down the system that's worked so well for the last 250 years? You tell me, Jake. I mean, I think those are questions that people want to know the answer to, not just Chris Coons. I mean, all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one question I have for you is,
so right now our cars
are you worried? Do you think that they will come up with a reason to prosecute you? I mean, you are somebody that Donald Trump was attacking on his social media site this week. Maybe yesterday. I can't. It all blurs together. Yesterday, I think it was.
48 hours. The love affair continues. Just remember, people that are attacking you on their Twitter sites, they're thinking about you, Jake. So the love affair between me and Donald Trump continues. So,
That's
you
a,
know,
that's
listen,
a nice way to think of
they
it,
want-
but I wonder,
Yeah,
are you
they-
like,
they
are you
want-
lawyering up?
Listen, I'm not lawyering up. I've never lived in fear. If they want to come after me for exercising my First Amendment rights, guys, come after me. Let's go. I'll defend myself in a court if I have to, but that's a breach of the Constitution. So if we're going that far, imagine Dwight Eisenhower when he was preparing for his presidential transition, opining about the opinions of private citizens. So if we're going that far in the country, it's very She-like. You'll destabilize the economy. You'll freeze everybody in the private sector. They won't know exactly where to move, and that will shrink the economy. So if that's the direction we're going in, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, Jake. I live in, 2 miles from where my mom and dad raised me, and I'm an American, and I'm going to fight for the system that I believe in, and the system that's made you and me and so many other Americans very, very successful. So if I'm on their enemies list and they're looking to prosecute me, let's go.
So one of the,
I'm not someone's going to back down from these people.
Yeah.
I got raised in the country, and we have a Bill of Rights, and so I'm operating inside the Bill of Rights. These guys want to operate outside of it. Let's go.
yeah, they wouldn't go after you for something you said. It would be something else, I think is the idea. But one of the questions I have.
No. The idea is they have these show trials, and you
Right.
said something stupid in front of the Congress, and you perjured yourself. Then you do the Steve Bannon, 4-month prison sentence.
Right.
I look. I know their game. I know what they want to do to people. And if that's what they want to do to me, go ahead. But you will send a ripple, a very chilling effect through the private sector, and you will knock yourself off of the course that you think you're on.
So I want to ask you, he's obviously really surrounding himself with loyalists, people who will unquestioningly defend him. My general feeling that is that one of the worst decisions a leader can do is to surround himself with people who will only tell him what he or her what they want to hear. Never tell them bad news. Never tell them when they're overreacting, etc. And I know that whatever was said about him in the first term, he did have John Kelly around him. He did have Bill Barr around him. He did have people who would tell him that. And I wonder if you see anybody around him who would be willing to say to him, "You can't do that."
Well, listen, I don't know Susie Wiles super well. I've met her a few times and various things over 20 years of being a Republican. I mean, yeah, so she seems very reasonable, and she seems like somebody that could be a truth teller. Marco Rubio seems like a very reasonable person to me. Obviously, he's had his rows and spats with Trump in the past. I would imagine that he would be one of those people. John Radcliffe, I sort of feel like would be one of those people. But listen, you know how this stuff goes. Okay, if you're not going to tell a leader the truth, it always runs off the rails. There's never been a situation in sociology or in a government or in a company, even a small company like mine. You got to have people around. You have to be secure enough to have people around you that you can accept dissent and critical feedback. There was a great plaque in Reagan's office. I think he got it from Harry Truman. You can get anywhere you want in life as long as you don't care who gets the credit. In Donald Trump's world, it says, hey, man, I get all the credit, and the spotlight's got to be on me. And if it might be on you temporarily, I'm going to hit you with a ray gun. And so these people will learn very quickly that's a very tough place to work. General Kelly can tell you that. Bill Barr could tell you that. And these people, I guess, are going in with great excitement, but look out because there's a lot of pitfalls operating with a management style like that.
Anthony Scaramucci, thanks to you.
All right. Joining me now, I'm only half kidding. Joining me now is the great Kellyanne Conway, former counselor to President Trump and host of Here's the Deal on Fox Nation, and Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House and a Fox News contributor. Welcome to both of you. Newt, you look great, terrific, great. Kellyanne, you look great. I love the pink. Kellyanne, I go to you first. I think
We heard you talking.
Joe and Jill Biden voted for Donald Trump, and I'm not really kidding.
No, why wouldn't they? I mean, Kamala Harris made very few things clear in her campaign, but she made very clear, I'm not Joe Biden. I'll be different than Joe Biden. My presidency will not be Joe Biden's. And then, of course, Sonny.
What song were you singing, Joe? Can you sing it again, please?
No, I wasn't singing a song.
Sounded like you were. Well, you should have.
Okay, Alan.
We heard singing. We heard singing.
Can you sing something anyway? Thank you.
You didn't might have called her stupid. You did.
Bruce Wayne said he might not be able to be on the mic. He's out running errands and getting something done. So I don't know anything about him. I was waiting to get to Christy Nome so I could talk shit about her.
I know with Kash Patel that he was the one stalwart that really stuck by Trump during the first administration. He's been very forthright about the FBI practices and being against them, and saying that things like feasting needed to be redone and these types of things. So I think he's an excellent pick. I mean, to me, he's kind of the same type of pick as like Tulsi, in the sense of she got put on the list, now she's over that list, right? So I kind of see Kash Patel as being that kind of a thing. I hear he's very, very smart. He's very well spoken. He's very he's a very strong conservative, and he's a very strong person standing with Trump. I think he's going to try and revamp it and clean out some of the crap that's in there. And by him being head thing, you think about that. By changing him to head of the FBI, they pretty much cut the head of the snake, right? And that being that kind of stuff, the shenanigans you were seeing from the FBI were coming from the top. They weren't just among the agents; they were coming from the top. And so I think he can put a stop to that. And I'm not saying he'll be able to do that throughout the FBI, but I think he'll make great headway in that.
I absolutely love the guy. I think he's got balls of steel. I love how he's been outspoken. He's smart as hell. I think he's a phenomenal pick. I'm very very happy with that selection. I've always liked him.
I do.
If you're asking me, yes.
You know, when Trump went to the White House to meet with Biden, Matt Gaetz went with him. And before anything was announced, I knew something was coming. But I do want to step back to Cash Patel for just a moment, and I want to bring up the fact that he actually testified in the Colorado hearing where they were trying to remove Trump from the ballot. He actually testified in that hearing. And that's when it first was really becoming public knowledge that Trump did say that he approved the 10,000 National Guard troops that came out of that questioning there on that hearing. But Matt Gaetz, he's been a pretty good champion. I like him. I felt like he let a couple of the J6ers down recently when he was supposed to follow up with John Strand for being put into solitary confinement. He brought that up in a hearing and we never heard anything else about it. But maybe he did something behind the scenes to resolve that because John Strand is out now and he seems to be really championing him. So if somebody that's been through that persecution is good with him, I'm going to get behind him too. Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz. Cash Patel's the one that testified in Colorado, and then I went on to Matt Gaetz. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that.
And Joe, you said something last night about Matt Gaetz, and I went and did some research on him and some further research because I had a feeling I knew what you were talking about, but I was like, those are drops. Okay, so there were two things with Matt Gaetz that hit the news. One was so the Justice Department tried to bring him up on charges of child trafficking or child molestation or some bullshit, but they had nothing, and so they had to drop the case, and they did their damage by associating his name with that. But that was their point, and they knew they were going to drop the case. The other was I don't know who it was. I was trying to find the article earlier, and I'll try and find it again. But where someone tried to extort him out of $25 million, and he was like, no, and they just went to prison for that. So I'll try and find the article on it, but I don't think that. I think Matt Gaetz has good ethics, and he's always been very stand up and very relatable to people through his podcast or through his X account. I've seen him on multiple spaces, and he's just. I've never seen anything that I questioned about Matt Gaetz.
Fidgy, I don't think it was him. I think they were extorting him because of his dad. There was some family business thing going on there.
Something like that, yeah. But those were the only two things I could find on Gaetz. How you feel about Trump doing it? Or Tulsi? Or Cruz? Or a lot of these people, they all run the cameras. That's their whole point. That's how they get their voice heard. Okay. Well, no, the comment you made last night was you questioned his ethics. But then when I asked about it, you kind of smoothed over. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
As much as it pains me, I kind of agree with Joe on the Matt Gates thing. Nobody asked me to be the AG, which would have been the right choice, obviously. But I'd have got rid of like everybody would have quit. It'd have been great. But seriously, there were a lot better names. I thought Paxton from Paxton from Texas was a real choice. I honestly thought he might have even gone to a Trey Gowdy and said, hey, even though Trey looks like a villain at this point. But Matt doesn't have the experience in federal law that he does. It's just hard for me because I'd like someone with that kind of experience on the federal level to know what the hell they're doing. But that's a political appointment, and I think that's a pat on the back. Thanks for being a good boy, Matt. But I don't think he's the right person for the job. I don't think he's shitty, but I think there could be better. That's all I got.
My only problem with
Matt Gates is actually my current county representative. I mean, he could do certain things better, absolutely, but I think he doesn't try to gray wash or beat around the bush when he goes about uh, his policies.
How many years law experience does he have?
That's a really good question. I do not have the answer to that.
Less than 5. I don't want him being my AG.
Yeah,
Trump
it
learned his lesson from last time. He's picking off roster and he's picking loyalists. He's not picking the people that you expect.
Honestly, if I can butt back in real quick without raising my hand, I would love to see somebody pick. I would love to see John Kennedy from Louisiana. That man is a walking treasure. He is an absolute library of law, and he's very reasonable. He's very measured in his approach, and he's brilliant. And I would love to see him. I don't know if he would want to stop representing the people of Louisiana, but to me, he would be the perfect attorney general. Okay, I'm sorry.
Who said Trey Gowdy?
Joe.
Yeah, I love Trey Gowdy. I would have loved to seen that pick. That's all I had to say.
He looks like a Bond villain now.
Yeah, the times I've heard him speak, I just found him just like masterful with from a legal perspective. I think he would have been a phenomenal choice. Yeah.
Who was it that mentioned Candy down Louisiana? Because like as soon as I heard that, first thing I thought was, well, Louisiana has some of the worst tort laws in the United States. So definitely good to have someone that understands some of the worst of our legal system as opposed to some of the best.
I said it. I'm a big fan of Kennedy from Louisiana. Like I subscribe to his YouTube channel just to watch him rip apart people in the Judicial Committee.
Oh wow. I wanted to kind of go back to Gates. Like I said earlier, that I always considered him more of like a yes man, or like the Roosevelt type that he'll be heavy swinging, but not always completely think through the implications of his actions, as opposed to someone like I mentioned earlier, Mike Lee from Utah. But one thing
Bro, why do all these dudes sound gay as shit?
one thing I wanted to kind of ask
Sound
was
gay, bro.
So what if he is? Shut up.
Who's talking?
Yeah, who brought up Jake?
Don't worry about it.
Okay, Jake, you're going down. Okay. Make
But
a
one-
listener.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. One thing I wanted to ask was what you thought about just kind of his relationship with the House Freedom Caucus, because, like I said, in the past session, of course, they were instrumental in throwing out McCarthy from the speaker position, and interestingly enough, like I said, the House Freedom Caucus have had their own issues with the voting out of their chair, Bob Good from the 5th Congressional District. Yes.
I do. I do. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because you guys talked about the suits that he went through earlier. He had the extortion, that he had to go through some things before that was resolved. And then he had the accusations of impropriety. And then once he ousted McCarthy, he had McCarthy's war chest come after him too, and put up a candidate trying to knock him out of office, put some money in trying to get folks to rally against him. So just like Tulsi, Matt's kind of felt the weight coming after him on occasion. So I think that has something to do with many of these choices.
Hey, what's up, Joe? Everybody. So I kind of tuned in. I just joined like 5 minutes ago. I'm generally hearing here that you're not in favor of Gates as AG. Joe, is that right? Is that kind of the consensus here, or? Okay, well, that's interesting. I thought maybe you knew uh, a lot about him, and that's why maybe you thought that. Well, I'm going to quickly just make the case for Gates as AG. I'm really happy about this pick, and I hope he can get confirmed. I hope he can get in there as like a recess appointment in the meantime, if that's like within the ability of the president to do. But first of all, I think President Trump has a mandate. Obviously, I don't need to tell you guys. So if that's who he wants, he should get what he wants. And I think, generally America wants that. The guy has served in the Judiciary Committee of the House for 7 years or so. And what's so interesting about that experience, not only, did he graduate with the JD and have like a legal experience before joining the House, but 7 years on the Judiciary Committee, he actually oversaw the Attorney General. So he had oversight into what the Attorney General was doing, and including like, uh, being able to investigate and investigate the conduct of the AG. I'm sure he has experience reviewing all of that with his time in the House Judiciary Committee. And, there's a lot of scrutiny there that we can point out. You mentioned a couple of instances of that. I'm sure Gates is well aware of all of that, probably more so than your average American, obviously. And then obviously the legislation experience that he has, because that role also would draft and review the laws that the AG enforces. And, I think he has a strong understanding of the legislative process. And so, yeah, I think it's a great pick. I think the guy's smart when it comes to knowledge of the policy, right? And the oversight. So I think if anything, he's learned what not to do just by watching these AGs over his time in the Judiciary Committee. So he definitely knows what not to do, right? But the whole purpose of this is to get a reform AG in there to clean up the department, and it's probably swamped with all kinds of ideologues and political activists with law degrees and bureaucrats, this bureaucracy. So we need somebody in there that's going to reform. I'm not sure. It's a good question. Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, sure. But what this points to is this points to what Trump has been saying, how he's going to reenact this rule or whatever it is. I don't know if it's an executive order or this old law. He's going to reenact it where he would have the authority to fire bureaucrats and just eliminate these bureaucrats throughout departments. Now, of course, if the president's meddling in the justice, people say that's not. There's that's like goes against precedent. You're not supposed to do that. But I'm sure they can figure out a way, and maybe you don't need Congress if it's not within the AG's ability to, eliminate these people that shouldn't be there because maybe they're, politically motivated with all of these targeted investigations that we know have been going on. Uh, if he's not able to get rid of those people, I'm sure they can figure out a way to do that without Congress being in there. And I think the president ultimately does have the authority to do it, whether or not it would be frowned upon. Yeah, no doubt. I got a quick follow up just to conclude on that because there's one more point. But no, I agree with you. If you can get it passed through the legislative branch, then that's what we've got to do. I totally agree with you there. And I know these lawyers are going to be lined up to resist this resistance movement. It's interesting. You've been spending time in leftist spaces. Be try to figure out, hear more from you about that. But look, ultimately, the reason Gates was chosen is because he has a commitment to accountability and transparency more so than any other person that was under consideration, right? So that's what we really need is transparency and accountability. The experience. I think he's got the experience. Ultimately, it comes down to the motive. All right, thanks.
I asked Brock about his power to fire folks, and he says, this is from Grok, the Attorney General can hire and fire employees within the DOJ, including staff attorneys, administrative staff, and other personnel. So that's who he has the authority to hire and fire. I'm not disputing you, Joe. I was just yeah, one more one thing to back up what Civic said. I don't want to mess the terminology up, but Matt Gates is one of the very few, if not only, congressmen that does not take big money. All of his donations for all of his political stuff have come through small donors. So that speaks of his character a bit.
Well, he's also an accessible guy. Like you can actually get a hold of this guy.
I love the pick. I mean, I think he's gonna be you love him or you hate him, and I just love him. So I think that's the best of the bunch. That's the happiest I'm with.
This is my favorite pick of all, and I can't wait to watch him drop kick people back across the border. He'll find a way if he has to drive 'em in his own pickup.
I am sorry, buddy. I was driving. Had to get to my mic. So, Homan, yeah. I mean, what's not to love about his passion, right? He's hardcore, and I I'm very happy to have somebody with a similar mindset in that position. But I will say, um, I think you know we're hearing a lot of passion from a lot of cabinet members, and there's a lot of energy, and I think that's all wonderful stuff. But I think they're going to find that they're going to have a more difficult time than they anticipate, maybe, or at least they're going to have a more difficult time than they're leading the public to believe, right? As you said, Joe, uh, I think it goes both ways. I mean, the Democrats are already planning on how they're going to foil the efforts of Trump, and he's been working on this stuff for a long time. He was talking to people back in August about who was going to be in what cabinet position and how they were going to, what their strategy would be to conquer this problem and that problem. And Holman knows that business inside and out. So he knows what he can do and what he can't do according to the law. I think he's pushing his luck with the cartel, but he knows it better than I do. So have at it, buddy. Yeah, absolutely. I'd go for it.
As far as immigration, like I was talking with a sheriff that was looking to um, get appointed to state senator, and one point he always brought up is there's a lot of times where they will immigration will toss someone across the border, and like the sheriff will arrest the same immigrant like 7 times and constantly deport them in a never-ending cycle of them getting deported, them getting caught back in the United States soil, and them being deported again. So as far as mass immigration goes, it's getting to the point of what's the cost benefit of actually deporting them as opposed to um, creating like a simpler path to citizenship where we can more easily tax them and be able to get some money back from them as opposed to just having them completely milk our welfare state. So when it comes to practicality of deportation, I definitely have a lot of concerns, and that aren't even just my concerns, but what I've heard from legislators, sheriff's office, and law enforcement officers that just have expressed the concerns with just how our system operates as far as immigration.
Well, I forgot the point I raised my hand for, but on the deportation, I think all we have to do is, in the time it's taking to transport them out, have a recording in multiple languages telling them that if you do this again, it's a minimum 10-year sentence, and if by chance you get the third strike, it's a death penalty. I say we lock down these laws and make believers.
Yeah, and I also like what Trump's nominee said, where he was saying sanctuary cities will no longer be safe. Like if they defy federal law, like they will march in there and take care of it themselves. So
And there's already equipment that the NGOs are using to bring them in here. I say we confiscate every bit of that they were doing illegal activity with. Throw some chain link around it if they're waiting on a bus. Once you get a bus full in an area, send them on back where they came from. We've got housing for them everywhere they've been brought in mass numbers.
I think the only issue with that is when it comes to the point of, is federal and jail lockup here in the United States better quality of life than a life in Mexico? And having been to some of the non-touristy parts of Mexico, I can say that is very likely the case. In the fact of, I don't think we should ever hold Mexicans in jail for even criminal charges. We should just immediately deport them and make Mexico handle it using our just because, like I said, if they're in our jails,
But you
we have
said
to feed them.
you said they come right back earlier though.
I mean, right, but it also goes to the point of, is giving them free housing and free food for however years they're locked up for their crimes cheaper than just deporting them again. What we really need to do is build a wall and enforce the border.
That's you spoke.
Cool. It's good to hear from other people on this. I think it's going to be one of the greatest feats of modern American history, trying to deport 15 million people in a couple of years. You know, I've actually done a lot of had a lot of conversations about this and different kinds of planning, what people are thinking. First of all, Homan is a genius. I think the reason why he's especially qualified for this job is because he has the courage to push back against these leftists and this resistance movement. You know, with the facts, the law, the capabilities. And, you know, as we were talking about before, the American people have given this administration, this incoming administration, a mandate to achieve these goals. Holman's the man for the job, but he said it himself, he needs help, right? So, you know, just real quick, I'll go through a plan. Like, let's say, and this is a big number, like, I know people are talking about focusing on the criminals, start with 1 million people, but realistically, there's probably 15 million people that need to be deported. I think currently there's only about 20,000 ICE officers, and maybe less than half of those actually focus on enforcement and removal operations. So we're going to have to increase that department like at least like 4-5 fold. And this is why Homan's asking for help. Maybe this will be one of the biggest hiring uh, movements in the government in a while, and you know, this is going to happen coinciding with the mass firings. So it's not going to be, it's a trade. It's a trade-off. I think we're going to eliminate a lot of unnecessary positions and a lot of in all the other departments, and maybe even whole departments, right? Save this country money. But we're going to have to invest in this enforcement and removal operations, getting these officers out there. So if we boosted this number up of enforcement officers to, you know, 20,000, okay, yeah, we need to deport, you know, more than 10,000 people a day. We'll figure that out with the buses and planes, detention facilities. But essentially, we have a mass $1 billion. I heard your point about this. What the other side's talking about. It's going to be expensive. but they've already spent billions of dollars, and this pipeline's flowing inward. Just turn that thing around, reverse direction. A lot of these facilities are already built, and make that pipeline flow outward. Home is the man to do it, and I think we can deport millions of people in a couple of years. That should be easy. Now, the challenging part, well, it's not going to be easy, but I mean, it should be within the capabilities of the U.S. Now, the challenging part is to get that up to 10 million people. Now, I believe I believe that we can do it. I believe Holman's the man to organize, or at least consult on getting this all done. But it's going to take a huge force of people working on this. So it's definitely a conversation that's going to keep on going. Be very interesting to continue to watch it and hear more people's strategies and planning on how we're going to get this done.
Well, and I think if you just turn off the incentives, a lot of them will self-deport. Like, make it illegal to provide medical aid to non-Americans or people without visas. Make it illegal for soup kitchens to provide food for them. Make it illegal for people to provide housing for them to rent. And you're going to see a lot of them just turn around and leave on their own.
Against the law to provide life-threatening aid.
Hey y'all. I think it was you, Nate, that mentioned a pathway to citizenship. I want to ask you, have you talked to any immigrants that have come here legally?
Yeah, I've worked with a few that have overstayed their visas.
That's not the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about ones that are here legally still, ones that have naturalized, things like that. I'm talking about ones that have paid the price, gone through the paperwork, gone through the process, stayed the proper time, stayed out of trouble, and all that stuff. Like that's done that. They've done the proper thing. Illegals should not get a path to citizenship. They did not do.
And I agree, but like, we could simplify the process for those who have overstayed their visas, because like I said, they just got caught in the loop of paperwork issues. And like I said, if they're here on a visa, they were here for a legitimate reason. And if that legitimate reason can still benefit the United States, why should we punish someone who can actually help or benefit our society? Like say a doctor who'd overstay his visa. We can't really have too many doctors here in the United States or nursing staff, because there's already a shortage of healthcare providers. And the more immigrants we have that are actually in trained trade skills that we have, will end up lowering costs for stuff in like the medical field that we need lower costs for. Right.
Yeah, let's realize what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well,
and
20
I agree.
million illegals crossing under the Biden-Harris administration.
Right. Okay, let me, if I may, finish my thought here. So they overstayed their visa, which is illegal. Yes. So therefore, they are here illegally, which means I don't care if they're a doctor or they're a welder or a street sweeper. They're not here legally. They need to go back and either redo their visa and then come back again, or they had plenty of time. They're a doctor. They're not stupid. They know when their visa expires. So why should they get to stay here? And when I married my wife's a legal immigrant. She's actually a naturalized citizen. I flew over to the Philippines in 2015. We got married. I flew home and I was here for almost a year taking care of business that I had to take care of while we're waiting for her visa. Filling out paperwork, spending the money, flying back to the Philippines, waiting for her visa, finally going to the interview at the American Embassy there in Manila, waiting on her visa, waiting on her visa, waiting on her visa, get her visa, and then we're able to fly here, waiting on the time. It's redundant, I know, but or not redundant, but you know what I mean. Why should somebody who has this visa that has a date on it say you need to go home, or whatever? I don't know what a visa's how those work as far as that goes, but there's a date on it says you have to do something by this date. Not do something by that date. Get a chance. It doesn't have to go through all this process. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fiji.
I was going to say, I can answer part of that because I had a friend who went through that. So, first of all, if companies, even if they're hospitals or anything, because you mentioned doctors, they have to be sponsored on a lot of those visas if it's a work visa. And when they're sponsored, it's up to the hospital or the company that's sponsoring them to resubmit for the visa. They can do this up to 3 times. If the company misses that date, the person, and this happened to a friend of mine, the person has to return to their country for 1 year, and for 1 year they cannot step foot in the U.S. They can't do it. They're not allowed to do it. I mean, with Biden administration, they could have if they came illegally, but that would probably screw their chances later on. But my friend had to go home to Brazil for 1 year, and it took about 1.5 years actually to get the visa problem worked out and resubmitted and all that stuff. And he was legitimate. He was working. He was contributing. And it kind of sucked because he owned a house and here, and so all that had to be worked out.
And that's you're breaking up, Fizzy.
But the people who travel, who overstay visas are generally like they have a visa to travel. Let's see.
Well,
So
Joe,
real
can
quick,
I apologize? Jason, I'll take 1 second. Joe, I apologize for butting in, and Civic and Nate, I apologize. My screen's glitching. It had you guys looking like that it was the other speaker. I apologize.
just from my perspective, as far as ICE goes, over the course of 30 years, stopping illegals both in patrol, narcotics, and other investigations and whatnot, that whole organization, what I've experienced, there was periods of time where they would come out and actually take illegals into custody, and there was periods of time where they didn't give a shit. And it's all politically based. I can tell you, in the early 2000s, ICE was very responsive. Especially in the late 90s, and then about 2008 or so, ICE just didn't come out anymore. So it's I don't think it's ICE per se. I think it's the direction that ICE is given from whoever politically is in office. So the laws are there. It's whether that this federal agency wants to enforce those laws or not. That's been my experience, and maybe Joel, you've experienced that as well. But yeah, when I was in narcotics in 2009, 10, 11, they didn't give 2 shits. It was we got 4 illegals here. Okay. Yeah, that's been my experience. That is a very politically driven agency. Joe, tell me if you experienced the same thing.
All right. I was just going to say that ICE is one of the few federal organizations that their entire mandate is to solve the immigration problem and literally get rid of their jobs. I always question whether we should continue with ICE or just have it as a rubber stamp organization and give more of the power over to the states to do deportation with federal oversight.
No.
And did you ever get any money from Maya Lansky?
I never got money from any of those fellas.
None of those
None
fellas?
of those fellas. None of these that I've been reading about, and none that I knew. They never gave me anything.
None of the Pichettes?
No.
with Joe Lanou, live on X.
Also known as Duck Corella. I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent to criminal. You got any business? I refuse to answer on the grounds of intent to criminal. You have any profession? I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent to criminal. You have any occupation? I refuse to answer on the grounds of made intent to criminal. Are you a known racketeer? I refuse to answer on the grounds of made